Comanentia here with Tom Castleman, back for some more Salute Your Sports. Ready for an awesome show. It is Conference Championship week. We got the Bills and Chiefs, the AFC Championship, the new hot rivalry, the new hot quarterback matchup. Brady and Manning, move over. It's Mahomes and Josh Allen, and these boys are very good. It's been a crazy matchup. The Chiefs are 3-0 against the Bills in the playoffs. Mahomes is versus Allen. But Allen is 4-1 in the regular season. So they're actually 4-4 head-to-head in this, what has become the biggest game of the year, the biggest matchup in the NFL. I cannot wait to talk about the AFC Championship. Also, got an NFC Championship. Chalk in the AFC. I mean, you could argue, obviously, Bills, Ravens could have gone either way, but it's the 1 seed versus the 2 seed, Mahomes versus Allen. Certainly not a surprising matchup. The Philadelphia Eagles get into the NFC Championship. Not surprising. 2 seed, one of the best teams in football in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. We do have one pretty massive surprise, and that would be the Washington Commanders, the 6th seed, with a rookie quarterback knocking out the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. The Detroit Lions, not only knocking them out, they beat them good. Back-to-back road games, back-to-back games as the underdog. The Commanders have been electric, Tom Castleman. That's going to be a great game. 2 big showdowns. We'll talk about offense, defense, special teams, coaching, intangibles, and of course, ultimately, we'll make our picks in both of these games. A quick recap on the College Football National Championship. Ohio State Buckeyes knocking off the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in the Blue Blood Showdown. And lastly, betting locks of the week, sports trivia, statements of the week, and more. I can't wait to get started, Tom. How are you doing on this Wednesday night?
Considerably warmer for us Midwesterners, or us Illinoisans. We are finally actually in double digits, which is practically balmy. But the environment was certainly on display in a lot of football games this past weekend. We saw that with snow in multiple games, the ball slipping everywhere like it's backyard football. Shout out to those who remember a classic computer game of back in the day. I mean, it was a wild
Pablo
weekend.
Sanchez.
Oh, Pablo Sanchez is amazing at everything.
Amir Khan, but go ahead.
What's up?
Amir Khan. I think it was
Pablo
one of the
Sanchez
guys.
Yeah,
Pablo was the best, but go ahead.
He was the best. But it was an incredible weekend of football, and we were treated to some very entertaining games. And I expect nothing less of the slate this weekend. And we'll start with Chiefs and Bills, a matchup that has been talked about a lot because, as you mentioned, these forces have come together so many times because it's more than just Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, although of course they're going to be the ones on the marquee. They are the ones that are the highlight names, but this is Andy Reid and Sean McDermott. This is Travis Kelce and Milano on the defensive side for the Buffalo Bills. You've got Jones for the Chiefs in the defense. So there's a lot of rivalry here. There's a lot of meat on this bone. Frankly, let's start out with the offenses because that's where it's going to begin. If we're being completely honest with ourselves, we've got an Andy Reid-led offense. We have Joe Brady managing things for the Buffalo Bills on that side of the ball. The quarterbacks we can talk about in great detail, I am sure, but there's going to be, I think, some little things along the way as well. I mean, we can talk about running game. Usually this is a big passing environment between these two teams, and yet with how they've constructed their offenses, we've seen Buffalo lean really heavily on the run. So I'm curious, Common, who do you give the edge to in the offense? I mean, it could be by style of play. I know there's different numbers and metrics you can bear out. What are you looking at and when you give an advantage to the Bills or the Chiefs on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I'll kind of break down the passing game and the running game. I'll get started with the passing games. You look at this season, the Bills averaged about 5.5 more passing yards per game, but week 18, the Chiefs had 98 yards with their backup. So as far as passing yards go, it's a virtual wash. The passing games are pretty close. They're both kind of, in some ways, very similar teams because neither team has a clear number 1 receiver. I definitely think DeAndre Hopkins and Amari Cooper have been in the past, but at their current role, getting a little bit older, maybe losing a half step, being on a new team, there's not a great receiver. I mean, I'd argue maybe Travis Kelce is the great one as a tight end. Certainly looked great against the Texans, but it's a little bit more by committee on both teams. You know, you have Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce, DeAndre Hopkins for the Chiefs, and whereas you have Shakir, Coleman, Cooper, Hollins, a solid bunch for the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, Mahomes and Josh Allen, two of the best arms in the game, two absolutely incredible, quarterbacks. A little bit lesser season for Mahomes statistically this season, but I actually think, Tom, I've already said next year, Mahomes is going to be back to MVP numbers. He gets Rashee Rice in that offense. It's going to be so different. But let's talk about this year, this matchup. I think the Chiefs have scored less points, but part of that is the way they've constructed their team in general. They're not the 3-play, 80-yard team. They have the longest drives in the NFL right now. Mm-hmm. So the longer the drives you have, it makes sense you'll score less points. So even though the points maybe, and by the way, they're still decent. It's not like we're talking about, before week 18 where they scored 0 points. I think they were like 10th in the league in points or something. I think they dropped a few spots after that, but they were pretty much a top 10 offense the first 17 weeks prior to backups. So it's not like this team is, scoring 17 points a game, but they're not quite as high powered as usual. I think their offense is very, very underrated though, because they play in a lot of games where their defense takes over. They're up late in games. They're going out there on offense to get the last drive, not to win the game, but to run the clock out. So I think there's just a little bit of underrating of Kansas City's offense. And you look at Mahomes the last 2-3 years, I think of it when I think of offense. In a must-win game, the drive on the line, Mahomes always delivers in those situations. So I think Kansas City still has a very strong offense. You look at them down the stretch, 29 points against the Steelers, 27 points against the Texans when they got more of their guys back. Hollywood Brown back, Isaiah Pacheco back, Xavier Worthy settled in. So for the passing games, it's a virtual tie. Now, I do think the Bills do have a considerably better running game. That is where they probably get the slight edge for me overall because you look at the Bills, James Cook, over 1,000 yards rushing, 4.9 yards per carry, excuse me. The Bills had 2,230 rushing yards this season on 4.5 yards per carry. Meanwhile, the Chiefs had 1,790 rushing yards on 4 yards per carry. So, passing games, virtual wash. I do think that the Bills have an overall better running game. I will say this, though. The Chiefs are really, really good at stopping the run. That's what they do. So that Buffalo running game could be neutralized in this game. But as far as sheerly from the offensive perspective, passing games are close. Bills have a better running game. It's going to be very close to me, though, because, again, Patrick Mahomes in the clutch situations, game on the line, season on the line. I know it sounds, I don't know the right word, Tom, whether it's like cliche or corny, but the Chiefs can flip a switch. That's a team that can flip a switch. They can go from playing bad offense, but all of a sudden the game's on the line. They always deliver. And I think this team is at this stage in the season with Travis Kelce playing his best ball, with Worthy settled in, this offense is better equipped to dominate. I do think one thing to look for in this game, deep shots to Xavier Worthy. They had one in the last game they just barely missed on a bad play by Mahomes. I think that deep ball with those two guys, the Ravens were able to throw the ball deep on Buffalo. Buffalo Bills secondary, weaker. Kansas City could exploit that. But as far as overall offenses for this season right now, I'm going to give a slight edge to the Bills because I think they have a much better running game. But game on the line, if it's a 1-point game, one-score game, which we know it will be, I do still trust Mahomes even more than Josh Allen, as good as Josh Allen is.
Yeah.
And by the way, one more point on the offenses, Tom. Yeah. Kansas City has gone 8 straight games without a turnover down the stretch. So that's part of offense. You think of offense, just points, yards, etc. You don't turn the ball over, you win games. By the way, it is no coincidence the four teams in the conference championship games have no turnovers this postseason. In fact, the Ravens, the Rams, the Texans, and the Lions actually outgained the other
Mm-hmm.
teams. The four teams that won the playoff games were outgained on offense. So this comes down to turnovers, turnovers, turnovers. And you want to talk about offense, which quarterback do I trust more to not turn the ball over? That'd be Mr. Patrick Mahomes.
Well, I don't want to give short shrift to Josh Allen on the turning the ball over situation because
Much
he's
better
gone
this year.
this entire
Much better
entire
this year.
season giving up just 8 interceptions, giving the ball away just
Oh,
a
yeah.
handful of times. I would lean the Bills on offense on this one. I know that it's a little bit difficult when you're looking at season-long stats because of that 18th week. That the Chiefs basically just didn't really care to try against the Denver Broncos, and like no slight to them for doing so. I'm going to go with the Bills on this one though because I feel that they have a better weapon in Josh Allen, if that makes sense, because I think he's more multiple than Patrick Mahomes. Which is to say that
Running the ball.
he can run the ball really well. The Chiefs, they can do some run options, but Patrick Mahomes is not the same level of athlete that Josh Allen is in that regard. And that's just not how these offenses are really built. I do think
He's
that the
sneaky,
Buffalo
though.
Bills.
He always runs more in the big
Yeah.
games.
I
He's
mean,
sneaky.
I'm not saying that he's a good scrambler. He's not a design runner the way that Josh Allen is.
That's fair.
That's just
That's fair.
that's not part of his game. So I think that the Bills have a little bit of an extra weapon there, and I feel like their run game is stronger too. That's why I give the edge to Buffalo as well. And it's really interesting to see the commitment that they've made. I mean, how many jumbo sets have we seen where they bring in that eligible offensive lineman as an eligible receiver just to get that extra man out on the edge and then executing. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be important because Kansas City is so good against stopping the run. How are the Bills going to try to counteract that with using some extra offensive linemen? And then it's just been, like you said, finding a way to hang on to the ball to make the right play at the right time. These are two teams that this year on the offensive side of the ball, Buffalo has been more explosive. And like you've been saying with Kansas City, they haven't been as explosive, but they're consistent. And when you're consistent, it's a semantical argument. I wouldn't say that the Chiefs necessarily can flip a switch because why wouldn't you just always keep the switch on? I think that because the Chiefs are so consistent that when there is a slight break in the opposing team's defense, they're able to take advantage. I mean, that's the secret sauce to every fast food chain is the consistency. That's the secret sauce of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Hungry.
Is they are consistent through in and throughout. I go slight advantage, like I said, to the Bills because of the more consistent run game, the better run game so far this season. I feel that, if it's going to be a game that comes down to one or two big plays and it's the AFC Championship, it's going to come down to one or two big plays. I'm going to go with Josh Allen making, the big home run play either with his arm or if it's a goal line play and he's the one who's making that extra push. Just a slight edge to Buffalo on that one. Flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, this is where I think, basically we just twist what we were saying with the Chiefs and the Bills, where I give a slight edge to the Bills. I give the slight edge to the Chiefs on this one. I mean, don't get me wrong. The Bills have been very, very good. We saw what they did in their adjustments from when they initially played Derrick Henry and the Ravens earlier this season to what they were able to do in the divisional round. I mean, that's great coaching. That's great assignment. And taking away a really big weapon that I thought was going to be more significant. The Bills, like they said after the game, everybody's saying we're too small, we're not tough enough. Well, we got the job done. And I have every bit of confidence that they can get the job done here. But the Chiefs have been on another level with their defense pretty much for the past 2 seasons. I mean, I know every single year the team is its own entity, but the carryover that they continue to have year in and year out, and really kind of shifting the identity. I mean, everybody, like you said, talks about Patrick Mahomes and this big explosive offense with, a prime Travis Kelce, with a prime Tyreek Hill. And neither of those guys are there anymore. I mean, Kelce is still very, very good. He's not that same level of athlete, but who at the age of 35, 36 can be. He's still very, very good at getting the job done. But this is an offense, or this is a team that has a little bit of a different identity, and it really has rallied around, Chris Jones being the tip of the spear at that defensive tackle position. You've got Bolton behind him, McDuffie out on the perimeter. You've got playmakers at every single level. Whereas the Bills, I feel like they're pretty good most of the time, but almost the opposite of the Chiefs. Every now and again, that defense just has a lapse, and if you give that up against the Chiefs on that defensive side of the ball, their defense is not going to be as liable to give up those breaks. So that's why I go just kind of like the intangible, if you will, on the defense, to say nothing of the fact that when you look at the season-long stats, I mean, points per game, they were like fourth best in the league, and looking at yards per game, I think they were even better than that. Let me see if I find it here. Okay, so not quite fourth best, but still top 10 in yards given up per game.
Fourth best in points is Kansas City. And
Yeah,
I believe, Tom, they were second best or third best heading into the last week of the season.
That makes sense, yeah.
17.7 points allowed was the best. They allowed 19.2. So they allowed 38 points the last game, which is the first game they've allowed that many points in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so and again, caveat on that one for sure.
Had they played their starters, they could have possibly finished first in the NFL in scoring defense this year. So if you look at the season-long stats, on paper, I think that you would say that Buffalo is better on offense, Kansas City is better on defense. But my point is that I think that the gap on offense is closer than it seems. I think Kansas City is a little bit closer than most think. I think the gap on defense is a little bit bigger than most people think. I think this is where Kansas City is going to win this game. They've been so good on defense. Kansas City allowed about 320.6 yards a game. Buffalo about 341.5. That's about 20 more yards a game. And if you look at the Buffalo Bills in their games the last few years, I know like the stat padding. That's the right vocab. Buffalo historically the last couple of years, including this season, when they play a really bad offense, their defense plays really good. They go up against some of the good offenses, they start struggling a little bit more, whereas Kansas City can limit some of those better offenses. I think Kansas City, the first game, without Hollywood Brown, without Isaiah Pacheco, moved the ball pretty easily on Buffalo. The Baltimore Ravens at times moved the ball at will. They did make adjustments. Henry wasn't as good, but I've got the stats pulled up on my phone, Tom. He had 16 carries for 84 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, and that was after starting with like 3 carries for 4 yards the first 3 carries. So part of why Buffalo won the game was the Ravens gave it to them. The Ravens stopped going away from Derrick Henry. Again, I've told you this many times. Lamar Jackson is an incredible regular season quarterback. He's gotten much better as a passer. But when the playoffs come around, the passing game is not there for Lamar Jackson. The Ravens were going to win if they ran Lamar and they ran Derrick Henry. Combined, they had only 22 carries. That is not enough. And obviously, Buffalo, turnovers are you making plays. But I think, Tom, personally, there's a little bit of luck involved, specifically on fumbles. Lamar Jackson fumbled. Mark Andrews fumbled. Mark Andrews dropped a 2-point play. I don't actually think Buffalo did that well on defense. They took advantage of the mistakes the Ravens made, but that game to me was a little bit more about Baltimore giving the game away than Buffalo winning it. Combo of both. But I do think the Ravens made a lot of boneheaded plays, which is what the Ravens always do in the playoffs. That is why I told you, never trust the Ravens. They're a classic regular season team. Until they get over the hump, I will be, you got to prove it otherwise to me. But you mentioned the Chiefs at all 3 levels. They have no weak spot on this defense. Chris Jones is an absolute beast at D-tackle. Karlaftis, I saw stats on Karlaftis. He's got like 7 sacks in 8 games in the playoffs in his career. This guy is a next-level player. Nick Bolton, back-to-back Super Bowls, leading the Super Bowl in tackles. He's a big game player. Trent McDuffie at cornerback, one of the best in the game. What Buffalo can do is turn over the other teams. That's what they do best. They really turn over teams. They're third in the league in takeaways. That's their path to winning the game. Can they turn over the Chiefs? The Chiefs have gone 8 straight games without a turnover. Buffalo's more of those like bend but not break defenses. Get some turnovers, rack up the stats against the bad teams. I still do not trust this Buffalo Bills defense. I've seen them crumble in the playoffs. All you need is 13 seconds to score on these guys. So I do like Kansas City's defense considerably better, Tom, in this game. I trust Kansas City's defense a lot more than I do the Buffalo Bills defense personally.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun matchup to see. And, we've got a third phase to talk about here with special teams. And this is one where it can be a little bit difficult to kind of pick out, because so much of special teams is at times, luck or a broken play. I think here, I mean, and this is going to tie in with the coaching as well, because as a Chicago Bears fan, it's kind of hard for me to look at special teams and separate Dave Toub, the fantastic coordinator that the Chiefs have, from the actual unit itself. He's done such a good job. He's the guy that really helped make Devin Hester special. Took a special athlete, built basically a special teams game plan around that athlete to help him exceed at a Hall of Fame level. And we see, some of that even today. I mean, look at their game against the Houston Texans, that kickoff that set up their first scoring play. I think it was like a 60-something yard return. Every now and again, it's not super consistent because special teams is a little bit fickle like that. But if I'm going to pick a coach who's going to get his guys in a position to succeed, it's going to be Dave Toub with the special teams unit. Kicking this year has been pretty solid for both Butker and Bass. I don't think I would necessarily have one as a significant advantage over the other. They're both pretty good kickers throughout, and they're about as trustworthy as a kicker can be at this point in time. I mean, it feels like the days of having a Justin Tucker and Adam Vinatieri, somebody who is more or less automatic. With that extra point getting pushed back a little bit, we're seeing more missed field goals than ever. And who knows what the conditions, what the kicking game is going to be. But I'm going to go with the edge to Kansas City on this one, simply because we've seen them be, breaking off plays on a more consistent basis, I think, than Buffalo has.
Yeah, I think you're being a little bit unfair to Harrison Butker. Not a fan of his off the field personally and his comments, but on the field,
yeah, you can fall down a
he is
manhole.
second all time in NFL history in accuracy, and he's particularly good in the playoffs. Whereas Tyler Bass, by the way, missed the game-tying kick in this matchup last year in the playoffs. He almost lost his job because
forgot
of
about
it.
that. Forgot about that one.
I definitely trust Harrison Butker considerably more in this situation. I also look at the Chiefs and blocking kicks. You know what I call the block kick against the Texans? The spread saver, baby. I had Chiefs -8.5. That is what I call the spread saver. They blocked the kick against the Broncos as well. They're just a really, really good special teams unit. Now, I looked at some advanced analytics, by the way, Tom. They're fairly close in opponent return yards and own return yards, kick return and punt return. They're close enough where there's not a massive difference. But you look at Kansas City against the Texans. They had the big return to start the game. They made all their kicks. They blocked the kick. Kansas City is excellent in special teams. One of the very, very best special teams units in the NFL. So definitely got to give the edge to the Chiefs when it comes to special teams.
Absolutely. And that's going to take us into coaching, where I think I know where we're both going to go. And in part, it's because it's so name brand for the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, Andy Reid has been helming this organization for a good long time now. A quick trivia question, Colin. Can you even remember the coach that coached the Chiefs prior to Andy Reid showing up? Do you even remember who it is?
Was it Herm Edwards?
Not Herm Edwards, no. It was Todd Haley.
No, Todd Haley. I was about to say it, Todd Haley.
Like it's one of those like weird things where like I just had like a little bit of a blip where it's like, oh yeah, I forgot that Romeo Crennel and Todd Haley, because it's just amazing what an individual can do to transform an organization. And his coaching staff is second to very few, if any. I mean, Steve Spagnuolo, a Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator who has some head coaching chops. Not necessarily his best role, though. He certainly is great on the defensive side. I already mentioned Dave Tobe. And then yeah, I'll give some praise to Matt Nagy, his name is making the rounds in this coaching cycle. He's the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, whereas for the Bills, I mean, you've got Joe Brady on offense. I think he's fairly proven at this point. I was a little bit skeptical of the track record when he took over for Ken Dorsey. Was it last year? The last 8 weeks of the season,
Yep.
and I'm typical me. It's like, well, small sample size. I need to see more before I can put some trust into something. And looking at what he's done this season, he's been fantastic. Sean McDermott has been great running the defense as well. So this is one where, I mean, there's rings on one side of this field. There aren't rings on the other. The Chiefs have been there, done that. I don't know how many times. This is definitely going to have to be, not necessarily David and Goliath, but this is, big brother, little brother. We'll put it in this matchup. I'm going to give the edge to Big Brother. Little Brother's got to show that he's grown up.
Yeah, I got to agree with you as far as the Chiefs go. I do like Joe Brady a lot as OC. I do like McDermott with the Bills. I mean, it is no coincidence. You get this far in the playoffs. The Chiefs and Bills are good at everything. Neither team has a glaring weakness. I mean, sure, you could say the Bills defense could be a little bit better. The Chiefs offense could be a little bit more explosive, but these teams are really good at what they do. And it starts at the top. The coaching staff is so good on both sides. I mean, Andy Reid, he could retire as the most wins ever, regular season and postseason. If he wants to get the wins record, he will. That's how good he is. He's a brilliant mind. He's got great chemistry with Mahomes, with Kelsey. He's a phenomenal coach. Steve Spagnuolo is either the best defensive coordinator or the second best defensive coordinator in the NFL. It's between him and Vic Fangio on the Eagles. Those two guys are as good as there is. This guy finds a way to shut down everybody. He's just a super brilliant mind. And I think Andy Reid and Spagnuolo know the Bills very, very well. And they will find a way to scheme up the plan. It kind of almost helps they lost to the Bills because they can actually look at more of the mistakes. By the way, the Chiefs were missing a couple key players. The defensive lineman, Jalen Watson, their number 2 corner, was out in that game. So they are getting some pieces back for this matchup. So I got to go the Chiefs with their coaching staff. I mean, Andy Reid could be the best coach in the league. Spagnuolo could be the best defensive coordinator, maybe second best. So I definitely got to go with the Kansas City Chiefs when it comes to the coaching. But yeah, Spagnuolo is very underrated. You listen to Chris Jones talk about Spagnuolo, and you will see just how good he is. By the way, Charles Omenihu is the other guy that was out for Kansas City in that Buffalo game, Tom.
A quick a point of order. Andy Reid, as of today, second best head coach in the NFL. Just saying. Intangibles. I'm making a funny.
Oh,
I'm making a funny. I'm making a funny.
Talk about unproven. Talk about unproven, Mr. Castleman.
Intangibles. Intangibles. We've got home field advantage for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think, I mean, it seems like it's kind of facile to boil it down to just that, but we've seen these teams match up so many times, and the Chiefs have come out on top in so many of them. I don't know how much of that factors in, how much of that carries over, other than just the fact that the Chiefs know that they can do this. The Bills need to prove it in the postseason. So that's why I give a slight edge on the intangibles, although for me, I don't necessarily. I'm much more a believer in the X's and O's and everything we've talked about to this point. I think that as far as a postseason matchup goes, the intangible is almost negligible because both of these teams have been here so often. Both of these teams are used to playing each other. It's not as if the Chiefs have been here 5-6 years in a row, and the Bills are just up and coming. Like we're going to be talking about a little bit later in a different matchup. These are two teams that have both been here, have both done that. If anything, I could see an argument for the intangible going to the Bills side of things because they have come so close so many times. They can almost taste it. They're going to have that little bit of extra drive, that little bit of extra motivation and experience to know that they're going to reach a point where they're going to have to dig deeper than they've ever dug before. I could buy that if that's something that somebody wanted to say. again, that's a lot of look at the result and paint the picture to kind of like fill in around that result. I think that slight edge for home field, but I think the Bills of any team that would be playing Kansas City in this environment, Bills are probably like the most or maybe second most at very worst prepared team for this environment.
I believe I've said this on this show, Tom, and if I haven't,
Hmm.
I've certainly said it on my work show. I've definitely said it to multiple people that I know. As a Chiefs fan entering the playoffs, there was only one team that scared me. There's only one team that can beat the Chiefs. It is the Buffalo Bills. There's nobody else that I would be worried about. I told you the Ravens, not the least bit worried if that was the matchup. The Lions, not worried. Eagles, not worried. Commanders, not worried. This is the Super Bowl, Tom. The winner of this game is going to win the Super Bowl for me. These are the two best teams. I know you're an Eagles guy. That's fine. My opinion, the two best teams in the NFL. Uh, I would say Kansas City has the intangibles. I mean, they have won 3 Super Bowls in 5 years. This is their seventh straight AFC championship game. I know the Bills have been in the playoffs consistently, but I do believe it's actually, believe it or not, only their second AFC championship game, Tom. They've notoriously lost in the divisional round. They lost to Kansas City, I believe that was 4 years ago now, right? They lost to them in the first
I think
Super
so,
Bowl win
yeah.
for Kansas City. So it was the AFC title game from 4 years ago, the only time Buffalo was there. Now, I don't think Buffalo's necessarily scared of Kansas City because they've beaten them
Mm-mm.
4 straight times in the regular season. But there is something to be said about these kind of spooky playoff wins. I mean, Kansas City's been a little bit fortunate. Missed kick for the Bills, a coin flip going Kansas City's way. Those rules are changed now because of that game.
Hmm.
But Kansas City has seemed to have their number just a little bit more in these games. And it is very hard to talk about intangibles and not go with the team that has Patrick Mahomes on it because this guy seems to always deliver in the clutch. He always plays better against the better teams, too. We've got like the Bills, who I think, in my opinion, are a great team, but in some ways their numbers look better against some of the weaker teams because they really beat up on the weaker teams. And Mahomes is the opposite. He statistically plays better against the better teams. His focus is there extra. He limits the mistakes in the big games. I mean, this team has won 2 straight Super Bowls. They're at home at Arrowhead Stadium, where, by the way, Tom, they have not lost all season long, Kansas City, at Arrowhead Stadium, except for against the Bears in the preseason, but that doesn't count. So when it comes to regular season, have not lost at home. So I got to give the edge to the Chiefs and the intangibles. They've been there, done that, the champions, and of course the home field. It's going to be a loud environment and a very, very fun environment indeed.
Absolutely. So, in listening to the conversation, I think we're going to be ending up on the same side of things. I mean, we've given the edge uh, to the Kansas City in pretty much every single category. So for me,
Except for the
I'm
first.
well,
We
yeah, but I
both went
mean,
offense a little bit to
yeah,
the
but
Bills.
pretty much every single category, like
Yeah.
offense to the Bills, and I don't think that's necessarily enough to confidently say that the Bills are going to win this game. I'm going with the Chiefs in this one. It's going to be an absolute blast. It is worthy of the 5:30 slot on Sunday evening. So I think that it's going to be Chiefs win, Chiefs go to the Super Bowl. I think it's going to be a little bit of heartbreak. As much as I would prefer the storyline of the Buffalo Bills making it to the Super Bowl, I think it's going to be the Chiefs.
I love it, Tom. I'm actually a little surprised. I thought you might go opposite me, but I am going to go with the Chiefs as
Yeah,
well. I think this team is it's one of those deals, Tom, that until the Chiefs lose, I can't pick against them.
that's fair. Yeah.
Maybe if they lose this season, next year I'm going to pick against them at some point, but that's the way it is. Until you knock off the champ, I'm not going to believe they're going to lose. No one's knocked off the champ. So they are the champs. And that's a very scary team because you look at these last 2 championship runs, someone should have beat the Chiefs last year. someone should beat the Chiefs this year. These teams are on paper a little bit more vulnerable, but they were 15-1 this year, Tom. I know
Hmm.
everyone hates winning close, winning dirty, winning ugly, but that is what the postseason is all about. I think we can probably agree this game is not going to be a blowout. Kansas
Mm-mm.
City's defense is too good to get blown out, as long as the starters play, of course. So, in a close game, we've seen Kansas City do this. What is it, like 16 one score wins in a row or something? I mean, they
Something like
always
that.
deliver in these close games. So it'd be very, very hard not to pick the Chiefs. I'm going to go Kansas City. Let's go with 24-20, but it's not going to be a sweat. It's going to be they run the clock out at the end, Tom. It's going to be a comfortable 24-20, as close as 24-20 can be to comfortable. It's not going to be a blowout, but Kansas City's going to be up in the fourth quarter. They're going to be up most of the game. It's going to look a lot like the Texan game, in my opinion. A little bit closer, a little bit more competitive, but it's going to be one of those games where maybe Buffalo briefly ties it, but you're never really going to feel like Kansas City is going to lose. Give me the Chiefs. Give me a big game for Mahomes. It's going to be a
Mm.
big game for him. 3 touchdowns, 300 yards. Going to be a classic vintage Mahomes game. Couple guys to look out for. Travis Kelce, 4 of the last 5 games, 7 catches or more in the playoffs. He'll have a big game. Xavier Worthy, I'm calling this, Tom. 140-yard play down the field or more this game. There's going to be a 40-yard deep ball, maybe 50, maybe 60, and that's going to be the play that decides the game. Xavier Worthy down the field, Tom.
Yeah, it sounds like somebody should making a same game parlay or something along those lines.
Yes, I am.
I didn't realize we were picking score for this one, but that seems pretty fair, pretty in line with what I would expect out of this
1.5 point
contest.
spread, by the way, Tom. So it is very,
Oh, I'm,
very
I'm sure
even
we'll
the
be touching
spread.
on that one. I'm sure that'll be talked about a little bit. Let's also talk about the Commanders and the Eagles. Another really fun matchup is going to be a divisional matchup in the championship series and or in the championship game. And it is now official that the Dallas Cowboys are the team that has gone the longest in the NFC East without making it to a conference championship. Like you said, Eagles pretty much expected to be here. I know you and I both had them in this matchup. Of course, I have them winning it all. So I'm not the least bit surprised at the Eagles getting here. A little bit surprised at how they've gotten here, as they still seem to be working through some kinks on the offensive side of the ball. You know, Jalen Hurts dealing with a bit of a knee injury. I believe had a concussion toward the end of the season as well. So
All sorts of injuries for Jalen
all
Hurts,
sorts of
Tom.
things that have Nick bruised, dinged him up. And meanwhile, we look at the Commanders. Surprising that a 6 seed has been here. Surprising, I haven't picked them at any step along the way. Not going to be picking them now. But in hindsight, I can see that it makes sense that they got to this point. When you look at playing a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that won its division, hosted the game or a home game, but not by any stretch of the imagination a world beater, not really a Super Bowl contender. And then you look at the Lions. I think this was an instance where we were a little bit underestimating what was going on with the Lions defense with all of those injuries. If you look at how many points they gave up toward the end of the season, they were able to kind of mask over that with that Sunday Night Football matchup against the Vikings where they only gave up 9 points. But toward the end of the season, you look at how many points they were giving up, and it's easy to see the storyline that they just kind of ran out of gas. They ran out of talent, and who can blame them with as many injuries as they had? But
Mm-hmm.
that's to take nothing away from the Commanders, who have taken every advantage and have shown every ability or every bit of ability that they belong here, that they are playing really, I think, above what the summation of the parts is greater than the individual pieces. When you look at some of the names they have on the roster, I mean, Brian Robinson, he's a fine running back. Austin Eckler, he's on the back nine, so to speak. And you look at Terry McLaurin, and it's just kind of like a hodgepodge of other receivers. It's all working for this Commanders offense, and they seem to be doing just enough on defense in order to keep themselves competitive, in order to keep themselves in a position where their quarterback can go out and make some special plays. So This game, at least based on the line, not as close. It's about a touchdown, 6 points is the spread on this one. So, given that's a little bit more of a margin, comment, how much of a percentage, how much of a chance would you give the Commanders? I mean, certainly puncher's chance, but do you think that they're like really, really in this game, that they can
Yes.
really seriously topple the
Yes.
Philadelphia Eagles and make it to the Super Bowl?
100%. I'm giving them a 47% chance to win this game,
Wow.
Tom. I look at this game
Wow.
as a virtual toss up. I think I'd probably feel closer to 40% if I was convinced that Jalen Hurts was fully healthy. But there is some legitimate question marks with Jalen Hurts and his
Sure.
health. He's got multiple injuries. And I think part of it is it's all about who's playing their best ball right now. Look at the Commanders, they're playing their best ball of the season. The Eagles, not overly convincing their first two playoff games. They've been good. Their defense has been good. But I mean, outside of Saquon Barkley, I've not been blown away by the Eagles by any means. You're 100% right about the Lions. The injuries caught up to them. A healthy Lions defense, maybe that game is different. I certainly was not all that surprised by the Commanders. You know, I had a lot of money on them +9 in that game. I didn't pick them to win, but I told you that game is going to be more competitive than, a lot of people expected. So this is a very, very tight game. I look at these teams on offense. They're both on paper. Regular season Commanders are 7th in total yards, 369.6. Eagles are 8th, 367.5. Both teams, Commanders 15 points, 28.5. Eagles 7th with 27.2. Both teams on offense run the ball well. Eagles are 2nd in rushing yards. Commanders are 3rd. A big part of that is Jaden Daniels as a runner. He's actually a better runner than Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is a better goal line runner, but as far as who's quicker, who's faster, who's shiftier, who's a bigger threat for a 15, 20-yard, 40-yard run, to me it is Jaden Daniels. So what team is better overall in offense? It's close because as good as Jaden Daniels is, and you heard me say this on the show last week, my opinion, 5th best quarterback in the NFL, behind Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Jackson, these guys. But I think Saquon Barkley is the best offensive player in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Saquon Barkley, one word, is different. This guy is so, he's really fast, but he's got incredible vision. He's just a really good running back. You give this guy a hole, and he's gone. Eagles also have a terrific offensive line. Their O-line is amazing. So I would say with the fully healthy Jalen Hurts, I think the Eagles have a little bit better balance in offense. I'm going to give a teeny, tiny, tiny slight edge, though, to Washington in offense right now because Jaden Daniels is playing his best ball right now. And I just think that Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, by the way, a little bit underappreciated. Those two guys, running back by committee, but they are very solid. It's hard to say these guys are just nobodies when they're 3rd in the league in rushing yards. So it is very, very close. But because of Jalen Hurts' injuries, because the Commanders are more explosive down the field, Terry McLaurin making plays left and right. By the way, I believe it's 3 straight games for McLaurin with a touchdown. Now, he was 2nd in the NFL in receiving touchdowns this season. A very, very underrated player. I'm going to go a very slight edge to Washington on the offensive side, Tom. They're playing better. They look better in the playoffs than the Eagles have. That's for sure.
I'm a little bit surprised on that one. I mean, I'm going to go with the Eagles on offense. Saquon Barkley, like I said, he's been absolutely fantastic. He well over, or I think right around 150 yards in each of the matchups during the regular season. So between him and the offensive line, that right there is enough for me to say advantage to the Eagles. But I think that as well as Jaden Daniels is playing, I don't think Jalen Hurts is so far off. I still think like they're working through some things, but the Eagles were still able to put up, 36 points on this Commanders defense in the regular, or 33 points, excuse me. They lost 36 to 33 in Washington with Jalen Hurts throwing all of 4 passes before it was Kenny Pickett time throughout the game. And they still were able to put up a 33-point number on the Commanders. So I know I'm shading a little bit of the defense into this matchup here, but I just feel that the Eagles are more balanced on offense. I think that they have a better home run threat in Saquon Barkley. And once this passing game gets clicking, it's still working its way through things. Once it gets
Yeah, but
clicking with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts and Dallas Goedert, I just think there's more weapons at Jalen Hurts' disposal than what Jaden Daniels
I'm talking
has.
about where the teams are right now, Tom. Again, if you give me
Sure.
a fully healthy Jalen Hurts, I might lean the other way. But having seen what we've seen the last couple of weeks, it is very hard for me to say that the Eagles are more explosive, that they have a better passing. Because I would argue Washington looks more balanced right now because the Eagles are very run
I
centric, whereas Washington is doing whatever the heck they want on offense. I know it was against the Bucks and Lions, but they've kind of done this all year
Mhm.
against everybody. This Washington team just
Well, they
finds
put
a
up
way. Jaden Daniels, Cliff Kingsbury, they're getting the best of their weapons as they can. I mean, Washington this season, Tom, fifth in points per game. They scored more points a game than Philadelphia for the whole season. This little playoff run is not a fluke with their offense. They're really good on
I think
offense.
I know that they're really good on offense. I think that we're letting the 45-point game against Detroit, which included, by the way, a pick six and some other turnovers that set
Sure.
them up in good field position. They put up 23 points against a middle of the road Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense in the wild card round. So they're certainly playing well. I'm not
Long
taking that
drives,
away
though,
from them.
Tom.
I
Long
want to
drives.
take away, I'm trying to get away from the recency bias of, oh my God, they put up 45 against the Detroit Lions. They're playing really well. No doubt about that. I still go edge to the Eagles. I
I
just
think
like
they've
their overall
punted like
weapons
once in the
better.
playoffs so far, Washington.
They're
Something
about
like
to
that.
face a big step up in class on defense. And if we flip
Okay.
over to that side of the ball, I
Yeah,
mean,
let's do it.
that's where it's a huge, massive advantage for the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, Vic Fangio, I think he's the best defensive coordinator. I know as a Bears fan, a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for him there. I also just kind of like his curmudgeonly nature. I think that's absolutely charming.
No, you,
Uh,
Tom Castleman. I would never have thought
but
curmudgeon and Tom Castleman.
the way that this defense has been playing, you want to talk about stars at each level. Jalen Carter has put to bed a lot of the questions that were following him as he was on his way to becoming a professional athlete. You look at Nolan Smith coming off the edge has been absolutely terrifying. Want to have success as an NFL team? Draft some Georgia Bulldogs. Cooper DeJean, I mean, Quinion Mitchell, what they've been doing in the secondary has been a phenomenal revamp. You look at where they were last year in terms of defense, they were in like the middle to low 20s with Vic Fangio as their defensive coordinator. This unit is top in the leagues. It's one of the best in scoring defense, one of the best just in all around defense as well. I think it was a tenth of a point off from the LA Chargers as having the best scoring defense in the league. And I believe, let me just switch on the tab here. I believe that they were best
They
in
were
the league
first in
in
yards,
yards per
Tom.
game as well. So I mean, there's just a huge, massive advantage. Even if you want to say a slight edge to the Commanders on the offensive side of the ball, I think the defensive difference for the Eagles being tops in the league in a couple of categories, with the Commanders being middle of the pack in yards per game, and I believe actually the Commanders were surprisingly decent on the on points given up
Eight,
as
18th,
well.
23 a game. So
Uh,
about middle of the pack on both sides.
yes, yeah, right in the in that glut of middle teams there. So this is one where, yeah, for me, Eagles defense is going to be carrying the day. It seemed to have some worrisome trouble giving up some quick hitters to the LA Rams. Of course, the Rams weren't trying to do the Eagles a favor, but I definitely think that gives Vic Fangio something that he can circle on the tape and say, hey, when they went tempo against us, how can we try to counteract that? Because I have no doubt in my mind, Cliff Kingsbury and the Commanders, they're going to be looking to go tempo as well to try to gain an advantage on this amazing Eagles defense.
Yeah, that Puka Nakua catch at the end. Money, baby.
Hmm.
Parlay money. That's all I got to say. I was screaming at the TV. Also, shout out to Jake Elliott for the two missed PATs. Rams +6, baby. Yeah, I think the Eagles definitely have a better defense here. I'm not going to go as big of an edge as you, but it's considerable enough where it's not close. I do think
Hmm.
Washington's defense was better down the stretch. You look at some of their games early in the season, they gave up a lot of points. A lot of points to the Bucks early, a lot of points to the Bengals early. If you look at the back half of the year, their points per game were considerably lower. So they were, for a season, a little bit below average statistically. If you look at the back half of the year, above average. They played well in the playoffs. We saw they can get some big plays on those turnovers. The pick six, they had the big fumble against Baker Mayfield. So their defense is a little bit better than given credit for. Dan Quinn, a great coach, of course. He's a defensive coach, defensive background. But ultimately, Tom, I do agree with you. Jalen Carter, defensive tackle up the middle, one of the biggest forces to deal with in the NFL. The Rams had no answer for him. Nolan Smith is great. Cooper DeJean, what a great rookie pickup out of Iowa. Darius Slay has looked better. Mitchell's looked better. Gardner Johnson at safety, one of the best in the league. I mean, second in least points allowed, first in yards per game allowed. Definitely got to give them the edge on defense. Kind of like we talked about the Chiefs. Chiefs are good at all three levels. Well, the Eagles are the same. They can rush the quarterback, but they can also stop the opposing team's passing game. Rams had some success, but I think the Rams have a really good quarterback and a really good receiver in Puka Nacua, a really good receiving core in general. So, it is tough to stop teams on offense in the National Football League. I do think a big part in this game, though, is going to be how aggressive are the Commanders, because they're a little bit more of a running team. They certainly can pass the ball. Jaden Daniels has proven that, but they typically run more, in part with Jaden Daniels. I think their path to keeping this game close is throwing the ball more down the field. I think that's their better path. Maybe not even down the field, but the quick slants, passing the ball. That's the way they can beat the Eagles. If they come out running the ball early with the rookie quarterback, they get behind. That's the recipe for disaster. We know they're really good on fourth down, Tom. Number one in the NFL on fourth down. If Washington has a chance to win this game, which I think they do, they're going to have to go for fourth down, and they're going to have to get fourth down. Think of it this way. Tough to get 10 yards on 3 downs against the Eagles defense. A little bit easier with 4 downs. But definitely agree with you. The Eagles defense might be the best in the league. I think the Chiefs are good. I think the Chargers are good. The Broncos are good. But in terms of teams we trust, it's between Philadelphia and Kansas City, the 2 best defenses and the 2 best defensive coordinators. Give me the Eagles on defense.
Over to special teams. This is one where you already mentioned him. Jake Elliott has been a bit of a glaring weakness. It would be a shame if a Super Bowl level team came down to its kicker not being as clutch as they ought to be. Although even with those 2 missed kicks, I thought it was pretty impressive. Jake Elliott being able to kick with all that snow coming down on the really, really tough conditions. Just actually want to give Braden Mann his due as well. Rick Lovato, the long snapper for the Eagles. Great job in tough conditions. That said, it's kind of hard to go against the reputation here of Jake Elliott, and with the number of misses that he has had this season. I think I go slight edge to Zane Gonzalez, who had a doink, but this one went in to the goalpost, leading the Commanders to that victory over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the wild card round. Sometimes that's all you need is the slightest of margin. So I think I give the slightest of edges to the Commanders on the special team side of things.
Yeah, 8 kicks is a lot to miss as a kicker. 2 extra points. I know it was a snowy game, but 2 extra points is pretty bad. Zane Gonzalez is one of many kickers Washington has had this season. I believe he only kicked 7 kicks in the regular season, making 5 of them, but he's been clutch in the playoffs. He did make, of course, every kick so far in the playoffs. Had the long kick against the Lions. The 2 teams, by the way, about even in return yards on punts. I looked up that metric as well, Tom. But I definitely think with Jake Elliott's kicking issues, Washington definitely has the edge. Keep this in mind. With that spread at +6, a Jake Elliott kick, I don't know if it's going to cost the Eagles the game, but it could cost bettors the spread if that's what they want, because it definitely costs a lot of Eagle bettors. For me as a Ram bettor, I was very, very happy with the missed PATs, Tom, in the last game.
I can imagine. moving to the coaching staffs, I find this one to be a little bit difficult because I
Oh
give the
yeah.
head coaching advantage to the Commanders with Dan Quinn over Nick Sirianni. But then when you look at defensive coordinator, I mean, Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator against Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with what Cliff Kingsbury has done for Jaden Daniels and helping him reach the success. But then you look at Vic Fangio on the defense. I mean, it's just kind of strength on strength here. Uh, do you see much of a coaching edge one way or another in this matchup?
No, I'm kind of like you, Tom. I think that these are two very well coached teams, two excellent teams when it comes to coordinators. Dan Quinn, legitimate coach of the year candidate this season, taking the Commanders from one of the worst teams in the league to a playoff team, to a team that's playing in the NFC title game. I think Nick Sirianni is a little bit underappreciated. I think some of the, I don't know what the word is, sideline antics, maybe him yelling
Hmm.
at fans, him disagreeing with his players. It's not a really a good look for him, but I
Yeah.
do think he's actually a really good coach. I mean, he's won a lot of football games. He runs a very, very clean offensive team. The Eagles are just a very strong team. I mean, they've been really, really good the last few years. So he's a little bit underappreciated. I do like Dan Quinn a little bit more as a head coach. I think Cliff Kingsbury, again, maybe not a great head coach, but a really good offensive coordinator. Cliff Kingsbury is one of the most underrated offensive coordinators. But I'm going to give the teeniest, tiniest of coaching edges to the Eagles because of Vic Fangio. The guy is
Mhm.
a defensive mastermind, Tom. We were talking about him versus Spagnola, 1 and 1A. I go 1 Fangio, 1A Spagnola. They're both so good. They're both right there. Two of the best defensive coordinators, not only in the league, but of all time. I mean, they had some personnel additions, Cooper DeJean, of course, but this Eagles defense was really bad last season. They went from one of the bottom defenses to one of the top with minimal personnel changes. I know Cooper DeJean was a big pickup at rookie, but a lot
Mhm.
of the key pieces were mostly similar, and that's Vic Fangio for you there. So because of him, I'm going to give the Eagles an overall slight edge, even though I do agree with you at the head coaching spot. I give Dan Quinn a slight edge in that spot.
Yeah, and I also want to shout out really quickly Joe Witt, the defensive coordinator for the Commanders. Because I know we've mentioned offensive, defensive on both sides. He came over with Dan Quinn from Dallas and was responsible for those defenses on those 12-win teams. So he's certainly, or not responsible, he was a part of the coaching staff on those. So definitely a disciple of Dan Quinn on that front and a valuable piece. But I think this is an instance where how much is coaching, how much is the player? The fact that the Commanders just don't have as much talent on defense, it can be a little bit difficult to say, okay, how good is the coordination really? But I, again, agree with you, a slight edge to the Eagles on this one. As far as intangibles go, man, I don't even know where to go with this one because, I mean, clearly you've got a rookie quarterback who is not afraid of the big moment. And you've got home field advantage for the Eagles as well. I mean, when they met up earlier this season, a 26-18 win for the Eagles, where it was a last minute touchdown is essentially what made it that margin. It was 26-10 prior to that long Washington drive. And at that point in the game, as an Eagles team, you're willing to give up 15 plays over 5 minutes because once the clock hits zero, that's pretty much it. So I don't know, like intangible wise, where I give the edge. Maybe slight to the Eagles for being at home. I could see slight to the Commanders for playing with house money, so to speak. Do you see any sort of intangible edge here?
Yeah, I actually agree with you. The way you put it is very,
Hmm.
very eloquent, to use a big word for you, Tom. I mean, the Eagles are really, really good at home. They're 9-1 this season at home, counting the playoffs. It's a very, very tough team to beat in Philadelphia. Washington, in the meantime, like you said, house money. They were not supposed to be here. They were the 6th seed. They haven't been here since 91. They were a team that, had the number 2 overall pick because that's how bad their record was. This team was supposed to be one of the worst teams in the league, Tom. So I'm going to lean Philadelphia because they're at home. I will lean Philadelphia because they're at home, but I think Washington believes. I know we'll get into picking the game next. We'll go straight into that here. They did meet up twice this season. Philadelphia winning the first game in Philly. The Commanders rallying in the second game. I believe it was 3 fourth quarter passing touchdowns
Mhm.
for Jaden Daniels in that game. He was absolutely electric, Tom Castleman. I know it was the game that Hurts got hurt. I know that contributed to it, but the comeback against Philadelphia in that game, that has to give you belief for Washington. They have to believe in this game. Washington will not lose, Tom, for a lack of belief. I'm looking this up just to
Mhm.
confirm whether it was 3 or 4 for Jaden Daniels because it was a lot. Let's see, play-by-play, fourth quarter, Jaden Daniels. Let's see here. 1 second. Scoring summary. 1, 2, 3 passing touchdowns in the fourth for Jaden Daniels. But I'm gonna go with the Eagles, Tom. But I'm not completely sold on this game. I think
Mhm.
that everyone's got this game labeled as the no-brainer game, and everyone's got the Chiefs Bills game labeled as the, kind of toss up, last
Mhm.
second game. I do think that the Eagles definitely have the edge on defense. And that is why I'm ultimately going to pick them to win. But that defense did get shredded by Washington last time out. There is some stuff they've learned against them. We talk about matchups within matchups. Clearly, there's something on that Washington team, something they do offensively that matches up well against that Eagles defense. Certainly, we saw that in that comeback. I think Jaden Daniels is going to play great. I think he's
Mhm.
the better quarterback in this game. I think Jalen Hurts being hurt, he is actually hurt. They're not going to tell you he's hurt, but he's clearly hurt, and he's hurt in multiple ways. So just how hurt is he to me is going to be a difference maker. Because if it's Jalen Hurts at 80%, 90%, 100%, yeah, Philadelphia. But if he's like 50 or 60 or 70, if they can make that team one dimensional, that's how you can stop Saquon. Not stop him, contain him. Let me rephrase it.
Mhm.
Contain him. Uh, it's stopping that 40-yard run from him, though. It's stopping that home run ball. That's what the Commanders will have to do. The Eagles, meanwhile, they got to get A.J. Brown involved. A.J. Brown has to be involved. He has to be making plays. He's a top 7 receiver in the NFL for me, Tom. They have not gotten him involved. He
Yeah.
is not happy, and I kind of don't blame him because he's a matchup nightmare. He's specifically really good at the 50-50 balls. He is one of the best 50-50 ball guys. So is Terry McLaurin. This is 2 of the best guys. They may not be 10 yards past the defender. They don't get a lot of separation. They don't need a lot of separation. Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, target your number 1 receivers. These guys are dogs. But I'm going to go with the Eagles. I think their
Mhm.
pass rush is going to be too good. I think Jalen Carter is going to be a force. Give me Philadelphia in a close one, Tom. Something like 23-20, 24-21, something like a 3-point game. Not a comfortable game for the Eagles. Definitely would not be surprised if Washington wins this game. Kind of as a neutral, as a story, Tom, if I had to pick
Mhm.
who I want to win, I would love to see Jaden Daniels in the Super Bowl. We've never had a rookie quarterback there
Never.
before. As a neutral, I'll cheer against my pick and pick
Mhm.
Washington to win if I is what I want to see. But I
Sure.
do think the defensive edge ultimately is a little bit big. Philadelphia is a little bit more well-rounded on defense. So that is why I'm going to lean the Eagles in this game. Not to mention home field as well
Mhm.
goes a long way in this matchup.
Yeah, I think Eagles better team by a decent margin, so I have no issue picking them. As a little bit of a quick surprise topic, because I saw this brought up a little bit earlier in the Twitter sphere. So setting aside all fandom, so let's just pretend for a moment you don't care if it's the Chiefs, the Bills, the Commanders, or the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Looking purely at the storyline, Eagles really don't have anything going on. What do you think would be the most compelling story for the Super Bowl? Is it the Bills winning their first one? Is it the first rookie? Is it the first three-peat? Because I don't think we've seen either or any of these things So if you had to pick one, irregardless of the team that you want to see win it, just from a pure story standpoint, is there one that you find to be like the most compelling, I guess?
So we agree the Eagles is the least compelling, right?
Yeah,
We're
Eagles
throwing
aren't
that
even
one out.
included in this conversation.
There's
They
nothing
they don't have a
compelling about
compelling
the Eagles
storyline.
winning.
Yeah,
Well, it's
not that I
interesting
can
you
think
say
of.
that because, we've never had any of these. A rookie quarterback has never won the
Hmm.
Super Bowl. A team has never three-peated, and the Buffalo Bills have never won before.
Yeah.
I would say the least compelling of the three to me, Tom, and it's close because all three are neck and neck. You can make an
Hmm.
argument for both. I'm going to say it's the Bills is the least compelling
Is the least
story,
compelling? Sure.
just because I think the Bills will get a Super Bowl eventually. Josh Allen is too good of a player. They're going to get better players around him. He's going to play another 15 seasons. I never want to use the word
I don't know about that.
inevitable, maybe 10.
Yeah.
He'll play a while, Tom. They can win a Super Bowl again. Their window has not closed. James Cook is a great young running back. They have a great team. They have a great coach. They have the most important thing, that's a quarterback. Buffalo will have another shot to win a Super Bowl. This is not their last chance. Their window is not closing. Three-peats are hard to come by. They are hard to come by. It's the reason it's never happened, Tom.
Hmm.
Rookie quarterback has never made the Super Bowl. Forget win.
Right.
Never made the Super Bowl. Taking my fanhood out of it, because I'm a Chiefs fan, for me, the most compelling is Kansas City winning 3 in a row. I'll go with the rookie quarterback.
Mm.
I think that's a really, really fun thing. I think
Yeah.
like dominance. Think of it this way. If the Chiefs won, you wouldn't be surprised. If the Bills won, you wouldn't be surprised. If the Commanders won, I think we'd be surprised. So I'm going to go with the rookie quarterback. Think about this, dude. The rookie quarterback,
Hmm.
if you're a rookie quarterback in the NFL and you're considered one of the top rookies, you're going to go to what? The first pick, the second pick, the fifth pick, the seventh pick.
Yeah.
You're going to one
That's.
of the worst teams in the NFL.
Hmm.
Like, I know Ben Roethlisberger as a rookie made a run. I'll have more on that in sports trivia, by the
Hmm.
way. So the best case for a rookie to win a Super Bowl usually would be to be a guy that gets drafted a little bit later, or a guy that gets drafted to sit and somebody gets injured. I know Big Ben was actually a fairly high pick, but you're not going to get a top 5 pick typically on a team that's going to be this good.
Hmm.
So I would say rookie quarterback, and also Washington having been so bad for so many years, is my most compelling storyline
Yeah.
personally.
No, I think it's, the classic 33, 33, 34%. I'm also going with the rookie quarterback story just because so many things have to go right. Even if you have a good talented rookie quarterback, there's still going to be ups and downs to a season. That to be able to put this together, especially with the rookie being the starting quarterback from week one. Because I believe with Ben Roethlisberger, wasn't like Tommy Maddox, or like
I
he
think he got
wasn't
injured.
supposed to be the starter, and then he became that once there was an injury at the quarterback position. So to go into a season with a rookie quarterback as the plan, as the guy, and to get to this point, yeah, I think that would probably be more compelling as well. Because I mean, we've seen dynasties in the NFL, and granted, we haven't seen a three-peat, but we could very well see one this year. We could very well see three-peats down the line with teams that are able to put together a multi-year run. Um, I'll push back a little bit on the Buffalo Bills thing. Next year's promise to no one, as far as teams making back, players making it back. I mean, look at the Cincinnati Bengals.
Ask Dan
Made it all the
Marino.
way. Ask Dan Marino, exactly, because he was there. What, his second year? I think it
Second year, I
was. Like, it
believe.
was really early. So that's why I think that would probably, to me, be like maybe ever so slightly the second most compelling, just because there's a little bit of that, like Chicago Cubs. There's a bitterness there. There's also a
The
bit of
4 straight Super Bowls lost in the 90s, Tom.
exactly, yeah,
That
like
was
that. There's
heartbreak.
a little bit of that feeling to it. And then I think probably the three-peat, as interesting as it would be to see that dominance, I also know that a lot of folks in America like get sick of dynasties at a certain
Oh,
point
they do.
where they're like, okay, we're
They
ready for
do.
the next one. So that's why I would put it like ever so slightly in third, but definitely all those are compelling storylines. And of course, I picked none of them as my Super Bowl winner. And
Boring.
yeah, no, not at all. Another game that was boring for a little bit, boring for a time, and then got interesting toward the end was Ohio State and Notre Dame playing in the first college football a 12-team playoff, the expanded format, the first championship. And of course, just like everybody drew it up when we made this thing, the 8th seed takes home the hardware. Of course, the 8th seed is an Ohio State team that for much of the season was a top 5 ranked team and really only fell out of favor because they decided, we're just not going to play our best football against our most, strident rival in the Michigan Wolverines. But they definitely, put everything laid to rest on the season, winning 34-23 against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in a game that, Irish kicked it off. They drew first blood. Then it was pretty much all Ohio State for the next half of the game, maybe 2/3 of the game. Notre Dame found a way to make it interesting toward the end before Ohio State just kicked that last dagger field goal, saying, "Nope, this is 2 possessions. This one's out." So that's just a little bit of a brief recap. What are some of the big takeaways from this game for you?
Yeah, I think it was Ohio State establishing their dominance running the ball. We talk
Hmm.
about Notre Dame being really good, line of scrimmage, offensive line, defensive line. Notre Dame couldn't run the ball. Ohio State ran the ball at will. Irish take a 7-0 lead. Ohio State scored 4 straight offensive touchdowns. They had 214 rushing yards on 5.2 yards per carry. Whether it was Henderson, Judkins, Will Howard, they did whatever they wanted running the ball. I do have a couple of takeaways, though, apart from the obvious. I give Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman tons of credit for coming out in the second half and not giving up. He's a superstar coach, one of, if not the best coach in college football. It is very easy being down 3 touchdowns at the half, being down 31-7 in the third quarter. Very easy to give up. Notre Dame fought back, made it 31-23. Late Ohio State field goal there to make it 11 points. But the Irish had a chance late in that game. They had a chance. They really fought hard. Give them tons of credit. And as much as you're going to hate this, Tom, it's the same thing I alluded to last week. The playoff system is not perfect. There's always going to be somebody who's unhappy. It is very hard to come up with the perfect system. But I think the 12-team playoff, again, I would amend some things. I would do the best 12 teams. I would, seed them. Like, I wouldn't give Boise State a 3 or 4 seed or whatever it was. I wouldn't base it just on the conference championship game as far as the seeding. You want to do a conference champion automatic bid? I'm split on that, but you definitely cannot guarantee the conference champion such a high seed. Like Arizona State, Boise State, these teams shouldn't be seated that high. But I think ultimately, Ohio State just had one of the most dominant playoff runs ever. They beat Tennessee 42-17. They beat Oregon 41-21. They beat Texas 28-14. And they beat Notre Dame 34-23. All of those games, double-digit 2-score games. None of these games were close. It
Hmm.
was Ohio State, and more Ohio State. This team did not win the Big Ten regular season. This team did not win the Big Ten championship. This team had 2 losses, Tom. Under the 4-team CFP, they would not be in the field. Under the BCS system, they would not be in the field. This is why there should be a 12-team playoff. You want to cut it down to 8, want to make it 16, you want to mess with the format a little bit, want to tweak it. Again, it's not a perfect system. I would tweak certain things. But I think we need more than 4. I think overall, the 12-team playoff field is more good than bad. Because having seen what Ohio State just did, Tom, it is hard to say they're not the best team in the country. And they would not have played in this game under the old format. So my biggest takeaways is hats off to the 12-team playoff field. And how about Ryan Day?
Mm-hmm.
If he lost to Tennessee, he might have gotten fired, Tom.
Yeah.
Same thing as Jim Harbaugh. Sometimes rivalry games matter too much. Because Jim Harbaugh was going to get fired at Michigan for not beating Ohio State. Then he won a championship. Ryan Day was going to get fired at Ohio State for not beating Michigan. Now he won a championship. I would take a national championship over losing to your rival team any day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
So hats off to Ryan Day. Hats off to the Buckeyes. A well-earned and a dominant playoff run.
Yeah, I think probably like the biggest change I would make, the realistic one, is the scheduling. It felt like it was a little weird having the college football playoff going on so late into January. If I had my druthers on things, probably give a week off, like a bit of a bye week after the championship week, and then get the playoffs started, because I feel that, and this has kind of always been my contention with a bit of the folly of the bowl game system and the championship system, is that there's too big of a gap between the end of the season players. These aren't professionals; these are college kids. You always run that little bit of a higher risk of variance in terms of how locked in are guys, how just like in football shape and playing shape are they. Not to think more like mentally, they're out of the routine for a little bit. Some people are able to snap right back into that, others aren't. So I think that it'd be probably a little bit more compelling if the playoff actually started closer to the end of the regular season. But yeah, I mean, exciting game all in all. It was good on the Irish for making it close at the end from a viewing standpoint, just because I know that one got away pretty quickly. And it'll be interesting to see how the format kind of changes, as we know it's going to continually change and evolve going forward. Another thing that's changing and evolving is our betting locks of the week's standings is common. Very, very strong week for you, going 3-0, basically carrying the show. As I went 1-2. I was not so fortunate. I think I had decent theory on the Houston covering that first half line, but the Chiefs had a little bit more firepower than I had been anticipating. So I missed on Chiefs, or on the Texans covering a +4.5 in the first half. Chiefs did pull away to win at the end, like I had thought, and that by the margin, which is going to be a tip of the cap for you. Ravens Bills. I was on the Ravens side of the thing on a borderline toss-up, as the Ravens were a 1-point favorite on the road. That one was a miss, as the Bills picked that one up 27-25. And then a big thank you to Ohio State and their special teams getting that 39 seconds to go field goal. Made it a 2-possession game. Absolutely the right move for the Ohio State Buckeyes and anybody who had the 8-point spread. So a hit for me. Not all is lost. Whereas for you, Common, I mean, nothing but laurels and plaudits for you, as you got the Bills +1, the Chiefs -8.5, and then, of course, Washington +9.5 against the Lions. Not just covering, but winning outright, and more than reversing the spread, if that's even a thing. I know that's not a thing, but
Yeah.
I think that's quite impressive that it essentially was a 23.5 point swing between public perception and the actual game result.
It was a rare game where I didn't have to sweat, Tom, because I feel like about 90% of bets I place, whether I win or lose, I'm about 50-50, but whether I win or lose, about 90% of them go down to the last, to the last wire. And this was one that they had it the whole way. Now, so Commanders winning 45-31. The Chiefs bet. Do you ever have that moment where you kind of like lose track of everything? I found myself in like middle school math, and my heart sank for a second, because the Chiefs are taking that
The
safety, and I'm trying to count, like, wait, carry the one. What is that? 9-point win. So 23-14, I had -8.5. The Chiefs covering by half a point. Does Vegas know something? Holy cow, right? And I was saved, by the way. Houston going for a field goal there late. The Chiefs
Mhm.
blocked the kick, Tom. Had Houston gotten the kick, they would have covered. They would have lost by, I believe, like 8 points, and my 8.5
Oh,
spread
yeah.
would not have covered. The Chiefs would have got the ball back with no incentive to score. They would have ran the clock out or given the ball back to Houston, which also would have resulted in me not covering. So shout out to the Chiefs special teams. We are a
There you
little
go.
bit closer now on the season records.
Sure.
You're at 17-10. I'm up to 14-11-2. So we are 10 games over 500 as a show, guys.
Fairly
If
profitable.
you want your NFL picks, forget the experts on ESPN. Come straight to this show, Tom, because this is where the picks are at. I warned you, don't pick the Ravens, by the way. I warned you
Oh,
on
no.
that one.
No,
What do you
I
got this
went
week,
with
Tom?
I went with childhood fandom on that one. This week I've got one line. I've got the Chiefs -1.5. Eagles Commanders being a 6 point spread. A little bit scary, but looking at that over at just 47 points, I think I think that's worth looking at for the over. We saw that the Eagles, with Saquon Barkley, he can almost score at will. It sometimes feels like. And then, of course, the Commanders are very capable of putting up points and a little bit worrisome, like I said, having the Eagles not really having an answer for the Rams going tempo, and that was in pretty rough conditions. That there were still, I believe, was it a 50 total on that game? I think it was like 28-22, something along those lines, Eagles and Rams. So I think that over 47 is quite possible for Eagles and
Over
Commanders.
47 on the dot, Tom, or 47.5?
I believe it's 47. I just closed the tab where I had it on
Okay.
Bovada.
I see it on
Trying to
DraftKings at 47.5, actually,
Nope.
ironically, for both games. But I'll give you
Bovada's got it at
47 if that's what you
47.
have.
Yeah, Bovada has it at 47. And then speaking of that 47.5, you're not going to like this comment, but I'm taking the under 47.5. Between long drives and between defenses that are pretty good, I think that this is going to be a little bit more of a low scoring affair. I think that your number, I think you had it
24, I
24-20.
picked under
So
24-20.
I think that's the style or the type of game that we're going to get here. So I'm going to take the Chiefs on the line and the under, and then I'm going to do the Eagles Commanders over the point total. By the way, a little bit of juice to the over on the Bills Chiefs, so a little bit better odds or a little bit better money, I should say, taking the under there, whereas going the over, that's a little bit juiced for Commanders and Eagles.
All right, we are back to being teammates on one pick. You know which one that is. Chiefs minus
Mm-hmm.
1.5 over the Bills. It's the Chiefs in the AFC title game. They do not lose here. They are in their 7th straight AFC title game. They've won 2 in a row, looking for 3 straight Super Bowls. They're 3-0 against the Bills in the playoffs. They know how to win the big games. I think they can cover 2 points here. I know the Bills beat them earlier this season. That game in Buffalo, Kansas City, undefeated at Arrowhead Stadium this season. Cornerback Jalen Watson, defensive end Charles Domenico, Isaiah Pacheco, running back, receiver Hollywood Brown. All those guys are back. All those guys did not play the last game. I'm picking the Chiefs to win. It is very rare you win by 1 point. Knowing our luck, it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
24-23.
Hmm.
I actually personally, Tom, even though I think they're in a cover, the way I would play this is put a little bit extra money on the money line instead of messing around with -1.5, because that scares me personally that's going to happen to me. So when I'm placing wagers personally, I'm going to bet maybe $20 or $30 more than I would have and put it on the money line outright. But for the sake of our picks, I'm going to go with the -1.5 spread, but I would go money line if I were a bettor, because I don't want to have that 24-23 game
I
for
mean,
me.
honestly, I see it on Bovada. The money line's -125, which is on the edge of what we typically pick. So if you just wanted to go straight up pick a winner, I'd accept that.
Well, then I'll give it to you as well. We'll be generous to each other.
Sure.
All right, Chiefs money line. Let's do it. That way I can just focus on them winning. It's just easy. Like that's what I bet on the Bills. Bills money line. I
Mhm.
don't care if they win by 1, they win. I'm happy. I cover the spread, and of course, my team goes to the Super Bowl. All right. And then I got Commanders +6 at the
Sure.
Eagles. Commanders are 12-6-1 against the spread this year, Tom. They beat the spread last week. They beat the spread the previous week. They beat the spread the last time they played the Eagles. They are particularly good as underdogs against the spread. I know one of the games they didn't cover was the last game of the season against the Cowboys, where some guys rested late. Whenever the Commanders are the underdog, they cover the spread, Tom. Plain and simple. Jane Daniels playing incredible football. Dan Quinn's a great coach. Cliff Kingsbury, great OC. Jalen Hurts is banged up. I am picking the Eagles to win the game outright, but I'm taking the Commanders +6 in the showdown. And lastly, I got a player prop for you. Travis Kelce, 7+ catches. So 7 or more catches, over 6.5. It is -125 on DraftKings. He's got 7 catches last time out against Houston, 8 catches before against Pittsburgh. He's playing the best ball at the end of the year. 4 of his last 5 playoff games, 7 catches or more. Also, he only had 2 catches in the previous Bills game. He's going to be upset about that. And you better believe that Andy Reid's going to be like, you know what? Let me look at that film. Why in the world did we not find Travis? We saw it last year in the AFC Championship game. We see it whenever the Chiefs need a big play, whenever they need a reliable first down, they find reliable Travis Kelce. Now, last game, he got a bunch of big yard plays. Had a bunch of big yard plays. If you look at this season as a whole, Tom, less 20, 30-yard catches for Kelce than he used to have. So I don't know if he's going to get the 70 yards or whatever, but I better believe he's going to get 7 catches, Tom, in this game. Kelce with 7 catches or more.
All right, that looks like we have a lot of really, really good picks there. Moving on to trivia, I'm going to go to the phone for this one. As it's pretty cold, always good to have a little bit of baseball to look back on. And of course,
Okay.
with the Hall of Fame, a quick shout out. I mean, this is a little bit more to the salute
Ichiro!
section, but Ichiro Suzuki headlining, 1 vote shy of being unanimous. And come on, folks, can we knock it off? With that.
Can we announce the
Also,
guy who voted
CC
against him?
Sabathia. We have not yet found that out, and I
Okay.
don't think we're going to. CC Sabathia, the almost Cy Young, and what was that, 2013, something
Felix
like that.
Hernandez, Mr. ERA,
But
Tom.
but now CC Sabathia is Mr. HOF, as is Billy Wagner, the closer for I believe it was the Astros and
Yep.
Mets were the 2 biggest teams
Phillies.
for whom he was a closer. But I'm going
I
to
think it was
focus on.
Phillies, Tom.
Was it the Phillies, not the Mets?
Yeah.
Probably. I'm going to focus on an Ichiro a trivia question here, and this is from Twitter at Cespedes Family BBQ. So, Ichiro is now the all-time Hall of Fame leader in games played for the Miami Marlins. Can you name the other 5 Marlins?
He didn't play there that long.
No, he is number 1 with 432 games played.
Jesus.
I mean, like, the Marlins have only been around since 1997, but also
so 5 Marlins are in the Hall of Fame. Ichiro's got the most games played.
So there's 6 of them. There's 6 on this list. Ichiro is number 1 at 432 games. So can you name the other 5?
Yeah, Mike Piazza.
Mike Piazza is number 6 on the list. He has 5 games for them.
Very briefly a Marlin.
Very, very briefly. So good job on that one.
Miguel Cabrera is not yet in the Hall of Fame.
No.
He will. He probably
he will be, and he'll. Yeah.
I'll
go for another hint here. Number 2 on the list, also a catcher like Mike Piazza. So Hall of Fame catcher.
Pudge Rodriguez?
Pudge Rodriguez is number 2 with 144
That's
game.
not a lot of games, Tom.
It's not a lot.
144 games, number 2.
This is how new and also not great the Marlins have been.
Man,
So these two for 3 and 4, both of them are former Expos. Both of them played in Chicago, but on different teams.
Andre
Neither of
Dawson.
them. Andre Dawson, very nice pull. The Hawk,
Yeah.
third on the list with 121. Number 4, he played for the White Sox as well as the Expos. Also a first or third base coach for them on their coaching staff.
Jose Vidro.
Not Jose
I don't think he's
Vidro.
in the
This guy
Hall of
was
Fame.
no, definitely not. This guy. How good do you feel with nicknames? If I give you his nickname, do you think that would be a dead giveaway?
Probably. I don't know why in
Probably.
my head. I don't think he played for the Marlins, but I'm just gonna say the same. I don't think it's the answer, but it's stuck in my head, so I'm just gonna say it.
Go for it.
Roberto Alomar.
Not Roberto Alomar, but good guess.
Okay, so he was a White Sox and a Marlin,
Yes.
and you said
And an
he's number
Expo.
4 on this list.
Number 4 with 98 games played. Not even just barely half of a season.
White Sox. Did he play more games with the White Sox?
Yes. Let me actually look up
Well, the
see if
Marlins
there's
became a team in what, the 90s, Tom?
1997, yeah.
1997.
So this player, his baseball reference photo is of the Expos, so that is the team for whom he's most well known.
All right, so I'm just gonna
Um,
think of Expos that are good. I don't think he played on the White Sox. I mean, Vladimir Guerrero never played on the White Sox, and he played.
Vlad did not play on the
He didn't
White
play in the
Sox
Marlins
now.
either. So I don't know why I'm thinking of Expo legends right now in my head. Did Jeff Kent play on the White Sox?
He did not. No, this guy is let's
Giants.
see,
Jeff
he
Kent.
played in the outfield. Um 7-time All-Star, has a batting title. I would say he's known a little bit more as being a speedster than a slugger. Oh, a lot more than a speedster than a slugger. Career high of home runs is 18.
Okay, speedster,
Mm-hmm.
Expos, Marlins, White Sox. Is he a leadoff hitter?
Probably played a good bit of leadoff. Yeah.
Juan Pierre?
Not Juan
He's not in the
Pierre.
Hall of Fame. Juan Pierre would not be in the Hall of Fame.
No. I believe this guy's nickname is The Rock.
The Rock?
Yeah.
Is it Tim Raines?
It is Tim Raines.
Yeah.
That's like my go-to. I knew that would be too easy if I went straight to
I'm good
that.
at nicknames, Tom.
And
I'm
then
good at nicknames.
he 98 games, like I said, and then fifth on the list with 28 games played for the Miami Marlins.
Give me a
This
clue.
guy is a closer in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And we would have seen him pitch. He was of our era, but only played 28 games for the Marlins. Much known for playing for one particular franchise prior
Is
to
it
this.
Trevor Hoffman?
It is, in fact, Trevor Hoffman. So that's
Yeah.
the list of Hall of Fame
Jesus.
Marlins.
Ouch. Wow.
Apropos of almost nothing, I just saw that and it just tickled me pink. What's
Well,
your
Miguel
trivia?
Cabrera will change that. for
Of
the
course,
matter.
yeah.
He played there for quite a bit, Tom.
But I wonder if he'll wear a Detroit Tigers cap. See, now I'm going to go to his baseball reference page. But what's your trivia?
He played longer for Detroit, I think, when it was all said and done.
I
What do you
believe
got on
that's
the
the
years
case.
played?
Load. So for his career, 1, 2, 3,
It says that at the bottom there. Years played on Baseball Reference.
5
and
years
Football
for the
Reference.
Marlins, all the rest for Detroit. So he's assuredly wearing
Yeah, Detroit.
a Detroit. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. So 16 years in Detroit, 5 for the Marlins. So he will be number one in games played just because it was early in his career. Who's putting up like
Oh,
150 something game seasons.
my.
Um, oh
Wow.
man, what a trade for Detroit, by the way. Getting
I,
him in.
I like that trivia question, Tom. That was fun.
Yeah,
I did pretty good with guesses. I
you
mean,
did
there's no way you can
really,
expect
really
someone
good.
to just know those off the top of their head.
That's one of those like file it away for a Sporkle quiz or an immaculate grid or whatever you're playing. Like
Oh man,
that's those are some deep pulls with guys
I
that
like that.
that's no, I thought it was a
I will
fun
tell
one.
you this. I these days I like football better than baseball, but
Hmm.
there's no sport better for trivia than baseball.
No.
There's so much incredible stats and trivia for baseball that it's just mind-boggling. Just
Hmm.
how many little tidbits and just everything you
Yes.
can come up with. Baseball is literally built for trivia, no
Indeed.
doubt.
Hmm.
All right, I'm gonna keep mine football, and this is
Sure.
considerably easier than your question. I'm gonna go easy, Tom, on you. I think you can get this with clues. You'll definitely get it. I'm
Okay.
curious to see if you can get this without clues, though. So Jaden Daniels just became the fourth quarterback. And if you've seen the stats, maybe you've already seen this online, but the
Mm.
fourth quarterback is a rookie to make the conference championship game. And your
Okay.
clue is none of the previous three made the Super Bowl. So all
Of
three of these
course.
rookies lost in the conference championship game. All three were led by great defenses, which
Hmm.
makes sense, which is what makes the Jaden Daniels thing, by the way, real quick. Talking
Yeah.
about this in the previous segment, Washington is led by Jaden Daniels. Like, he's the number one key to their success. It's
Hmm.
not the defense. They have good running backs, but he also runs the ball. He passes the ball. He is the best player on their team and the number one reason they're in the conference championship game. These previous quarterbacks, at least their rookie seasons,
Hmm. We're
they were
not.
led by defenses.
So I haven't seen the stat on all of them. I think so. I know Ben Roethlisberger's a rookie, had like a really good season. Did he make it to the championship
Sure
game?
did.
He did.
Now, that team,
Um,
Ben Roethlisberger, obviously future Hall of Fame quarterback,
Not at
arguably
that
top
point.
10
Yeah.
quarterback of all time. But as a rookie, it was defense and run the ball.
Mm.
He took care of the ball. He played well. I would say they won because of the other guys around him. So Ben Roethlisberger. So he's the best of the bunch. I'll give you that clue. The best of
Gotcha.
the bunch. Neither of these other two guys will be Hall of Famers. One, I would say, is a pretty
Mhm.
bad quarterback.
Hmm.
The other, I would say, is a maybe above average, but around average as a quarterback. We're not talking about Hall of Famers here, Tom.
Okay. So for the quarterback who's not a good quarterback, would it be Mark Sanchez?
Mark Sanchez with the Jets, Mr.
Because
Butt
that
Fumble.
was Butt Fumble his rookie year, or was that a different year?
I think it was a different year.
Different year. Gotcha. No, that was like those Rex Ryan, just like almost winning in spite of him. The last quarterback. This is the guy that's like a pretty decent quarterback, but not Hall of Fame level.
Yep. Very well known quarterback. There's a couple clues I can give that will give it away, so I don't want to go there yet.
Gotcha. Hmm, it wouldn't be Joe Flacco, would it?
Joe Flacco.
Is it really?
Great job, Tom.
Okay.
Rookie Joe Flacco making the conference championship game. I believe it was against Tom Brady. I could be wrong. I did not look up the years. I just looked up the stat.
Huh. That's and actually, I'm flabbergasted that it's all guys that were in like our era of watching football, like rookie
Which
quarterbacks. Like,
which speaks to how the game has changed, though.
sure.
These days, you play your rookie quarterback. Conventional wisdom back in the day is that you rest your rookie, you have him
Hmm.
sit for an year. You know me, Tom. There's never like it's kind of like the rest versus rust debate. There's not a unanimous, is it better for the guy to sit and learn? Is it better for the guy to learn by doing? Like, there's different cases on both sides. Obviously, you have your Aaron Rodgers, your Patrick
Hmm.
Mahomes, but then you have your, guys like Jaden Daniels, Cam Newton, Russell Wilson, guys that started right away,
Sure.
Peyton Manning had some growing bumps. Troy Aikman, but these guys started
Mhm.
year one, ended up being really good pretty quickly. I personally lean towards play the guy because I think a lot of these guys like Mahomes, like Rodgers, they would have been great anyway, in my opinion. But that's a whole other debate for another scenario. But the fact that Jaden
Mhm.
Daniels is here, those three guys were not as instrumental as Jaden Daniels has been to Washington's success. So he played a
Mhm.
near perfect game against the Lions. I am Team Jaden Daniels all day, every day, Tom.
There we go. Well, I am, as you know, a big Team Chicago Bears guy, and of course, big news for the Bears getting Ben Johnson,
The
and what's kind
Bears.
of a new-ish feeling that Bears fans don't quite really are used to having in terms of there's a clear-cut number one guy to go get. The Bears went and got him in spite of all these supposed obstacles. I mean, it's kind of funny to look at it as the comps or the the parallels between Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson, where Caleb Williams for the pre-draft process by most people was the consensus number one guy, the home run guy, the person who with whom you reset a franchise. And of course, had an up and down bumpy rookie season with a bunch of stuff that was well beyond his control. But then it's happened again for the Bears, where a person who has a lot more agency, Ben Johnson, easily could have said, I'm going to go to Vegas. I'm going to go work for Tom Brady. I'm going to bring whoever I want as my general manager. I'm going to be the de facto head football person there. Same thing with perhaps the Jacksonville Jaguars. He chose the Chicago Bears. Now, my statement of the week is to all Bears fans: guard your hearts a little bit on this one. We are pretty prone to jumping in all the way with both feet.
Mark Trestman, the guru at
With
offense, Tom. The
Mark,
next great
well,
hope.
I mean, Mark Trestman, he felt a little bit odd from jump, but if we look at that
John
2020
Fox led
season,
a team to a Super Bowl.
yeah, this is a guy that's going to reset the culture for us. Matt Nagy, here's the hot young coordinator,
Which is what
that
Ben
everybody
Johnson is, by the
wants.
way.
I mean, key difference. Key difference with Ben Johnson, we've got 3 years of history upon
Sure.
which we can look of top five offense. Matt Nagy had about a half season, but ultimately, what I'm saying is that uh, maintain skepticism. Just
Sure.
because the Bears did what is the obvious correct thing to do, there's still a lot of work to be done. And I know you and I preseason, we were both in on like, okay, the Bears are going to be our last team in, our last wild card team, and we led with heart more than head, I think,
Yeah, but
on
I
that
thought it would be
one.
the Packers. I changed it last minute.
Oh, did you?
I
Yeah.
actually thought the Packers would get the last wild card over Chicago, but the Bears did
Mhm.
underachieve our expectations. That part of it
Yeah,
is fair.
by a decent margin. This was a team that I think everybody looked at and said, no, this should be, even if you miss the playoffs, you should at the very least be coming down to week 17, week 18, being in it. And this is a team that lost, what was it, 11 games in a row, something along those lines, had an atrocious stretch to their season. So even though it's, I'm optimistic, I'm cautiously so because there's still so much that is unknown, and that maybe I'm just getting old to the point that I've gained some wisdom, or maybe it's just a little bit jaded. I'm happy for the Bears and what they've done. I'm happy as a Bears fan. I'm excited to see where the future goes, but uh, I'm going to take a page out of star cornerback Jalen Johnson's book. They've been supposed to be winning multiple times, and until they actually put the winning team on the field, I'm going to maintain a little bit of skepticism for the franchise moving forward. So be excited, be all about the head coaching hire, but guard your heart a little bit. We still have a long ways to go to where we want to be.
Yeah, my heart is definitely guarded, Tom. I have a few takeaways on the coaching hire. First off, first and foremost, my first thought is worth the risk. I think
Hmm.
that's the three words I think about it, just because then my other word is be skeptical of the OC. Just because I've always believed this in my heart, Tom, there is almost no surefire way to know that a great offensive coach or a great defensive coach will make a great head coach. There is so many incredible coordinators that do not work out as head coaches.
Mhm.
Mike Martz, incredible coordinator, not a good coach. Steve Spagnuolo, incredible coordinator, not a good head coach. It just does not work out that way. There's so many examples of it. I mean, like Vic Fangio, he's not a head coach. He's a defensive coordinator, Tom. Doesn't mean he's not great. Ben Johnson is clearly a great offensive coordinator, but the transition from OC to head coach is very, very, very different. But I will say this, worth the risk because I want to have a young quarterback be coached by an offensive coach. Caleb Williams, Justin Fields, these guys were coached by a defensive coach.
Mhm.
The Bears will get better, Tom. It's hard to get worse than what we saw last year. I don't know if the defense, if the special teams, if the team as a whole will get much better, but the biggest key is to grow your rookie quarterback, your second-year quarterback. Ben Johnson is in a better spot to grow Caleb Williams than, probably any one of the other hires they could have made. So ultimately, I'm excited. Great
Mhm.
offensive coordinator. I'm a little skeptical about some of these trick plays with the Bears offensive line, with the Bears offense. He did have
Gotta
all
fix
the
it.
right player personnel. Having Penei Sewell block for you, giving you plenty of time to run a flea flicker, to run a reverse, to run a fake fumble. The Bears don't quite have the exact personnel to do this.
Mhm.
I did see a tweet online saying, "What is stopping Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams? What's stopping this duo?" I responded, "The Bears' offensive line."
Ah,
There is a lot of things Chicago has to work out on. There's so many things to fix. The offensive line, the defensive line. There's a lot of things they need to fix in Chicago before we can say this is a playoff team. My gut feeling next year, not a playoff team.
mm,
Get the 7 wins, maybe get the 9 the next year. I look at this as a 3-year project. But I think Ben Johnson, to me,
mm.
deserves to get 3 seasons. Let's reevaluate this hire in 3 years, Tom. Like you said, pause the brakes. Pause the brakes. Don't expect playoffs. Tom, the
Ooh,
NFC North
ooh.
is
I
loaded.
know. Okay.
The Packers are young. The Lions are young. The Vikings are young. If this were the Bears in the NFC South or AFC South, give me the playoffs. This team is not making the playoffs next year.
Okay. So
The
this is
division
going to
is too
sound
good.
like a contradiction to what I was just saying.
Okay.
While I'm saying that we should not be hopeful that this is going to be a panacea for everything, I do think that the standard to which we should hold success for this team is a playoff standard because that's what was offered this past season from the Chicago Bears, and they did not achieve it. I do think that should be the expectation from
It's not a playoff team, Tom.
from a bar perspective. We'll
This
see
is
what they
not a
do in the
playoff
offseason.
team.
If they pick up 2-3 offensive linemen
They
in
never
free
get the offensive lineman
draft,
right, though. That's been the story
well,
of the Bears the last 5 years, Tom.
I'm saying that to not to guard the optimism and the pie in the sky, but to have the skepticism that this is still a high standard. This needs to be something that works within maybe not this year. Again, the standard
The
at the very
Bears had
least should
one
be in
Pro
the
Bowler
hunt.
last year, Tom. Don't let
They,
Chicago Bear fans tell you there's more talent than there is in Chicago. This team
no, but
is
I think that it's a team that needs to be better, and the expectation should be that it is a better team.
okay. Well, they'll have to
That's what
be
I think.
better, but they're not a playoff
Mhm.
team for me. So, anyway, my
Long
statement
off
of the
season. We'll
week,
go. We'll see. Go
which,
for
by
it.
the way, Tom, this will lead into something interesting. Let me ask you one quick trivia before I get into my statement of the week.
Sure.
Speaking of over exceeding expectations, what NFL team had the best penalty yard differential this last season?
I don't know.
The Minnesota Vikings.
Okay.
So,
I,
anyway,
I, I mean, I guess there's a stat for everything, but that's not one that I've even remotely considered looking at.
well, I have been
It's very specific.
spending way, way too much time getting to the bottom of these statistics
Okay.
because we as a society, We have so much ignorance as sports fans. We are ignorant, dumb, extremely dumb, and ignorant fans. The average NFL fan is, in one word, Tom, an idiot. They will believe anything that social media tells them. I am here to set the record straight with straight facts, baby. I'm a facts and a stats guy, Tom. This right here is about to be a fact, not an opinion, a fact backed up by stats. The National Football League and the referees are 100% not favoring the Kansas City Chiefs. In no way whatsoever are the Chiefs getting any more calls than any team in the NFL. You laughing over there?
Yeah.
I got stats coming for you, Tom.
I was wondering where you were going with this. You
Since
mentioned it's going to be a Chiefs statement.
since 2018, Tom, since Mahomes became the Chiefs quarterback, the Chiefs are 26th in penalty yard differential, the sixth worst in the National Football League. Now, a lot of folks say, you see Twitter, they say, well, what about at the end of games? Since 2018, Tom, the Chiefs have the seventh worst penalty differential in fourth quarter or overtime games decided by one score or less, and the fourth worst for the game as a whole. This season specifically, Tom, Kansas City was called for more offensive holding than any team in the NFL. This season in penalty yard differential, Kansas City, according to footballdb.com, 16th in differential, middle of the pack. Last season, they were 31st in differential. Another myth out there, Tom. Patrick Mahomes gets all the roughing the passer calls in the NFL. Since 2018, Tom, Mahomes has gotten 31 calls for roughing the passer. Josh Allen, 38. Here's some quarterback percentages, drop back passes, getting roughing the passer calls. Mahomes is at .636. Guys with higher rates, much higher. Russell Wilson, Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Watson, Jared Goff. And then the quarterback that's getting the most calls in the NFL by far right now, .936 is Josh Allen. Josh Allen is getting 1/3 more roughing the passer calls than Patrick Mahomes on average. Unequivocally, the Kansas City Chiefs are not getting any more calls than any other team in the NFL. In fact, statistically, they are getting among the worst penalty yard differential. You want to talk about a big game? The call a couple years ago against the Eagles corner himself said, I held him. I held him. I was hoping I'd get away with it. Do you remember the passing touchdown for Juwan Jennings and Christian McCaffrey? That touchdown should not have counted. The Chiefs should have won the game earlier. It should not have gone to overtime. Kansas City, plain and simple, makes the most clutch plays in the NFL. They have been the best team in the NFL, the winningest team in the NFL. They are not winning because the game is rigged. You, my friend, at home, listening and watching, you're ignorant. You're ignorant. You do not understand how the game is played. There is zero bias towards the Kansas City Chiefs at all when it comes to calls. That's the statement. And what do you have? You've got videos. Anyone can make a video. I've got concrete stats. 31st last year, Tom. 31st in penalty yard differential. So if you think the Chiefs are winning because of refs, you're watching too much social media. You're not actually watching the game. And you definitely are not reading the statistics. Because the Chiefs win these games because they're the best team.
I mean, they're not reading the statistics because up until this statement of the week, I didn't know half of this stuff existed. Like,
It's out there.
Is there such a thing as too much maths?
I've dedicated about since the Texans game
Uh-huh.
far too much time researching this.
Is there a number that goes with far too much?
Yeah,
Do
4 to
we-
5 hours, I'm guessing, Tom, which is 4 to 5 hours I'll never get back. I just like wake up and I start
Oh.
scrolling through Twitter.
Well,
And
that's
I'm
your
like,
first mistake.
That's
a mistake I make a lot too.
Yep. There's another stat. Oh, there's another one. They all favor the Chiefs. By the way, you know a big leader in a lot of these statistics, by the way, you'll like this one.
Mm-hmm.
Former Mizzou Tiger, NFL backup legend, Money at the Bank, Chase Daniel.
Legend.
He's one of the media members fighting for the Chiefs, and these made-up stats that exist out there from just people that just don't get how the game works. And they interviewed one of the refs, by the way, on this subject, and he said, I don't care what they think. They don't know what it's like to referee a game. As a whole, Tom, by the way, moving at full speed, professional athletes, whether it's football, baseball, soccer, basketball. I was an umpire, Tom. I've covered enough high school sports. I've played a lot of sports. I've watched a lot of sports. I have a ton of referee friends. When I covered high school sports, I knew all the refs, the football refs, the baseball refs, the basketball refs. When you have the benefit of instant replay and slow-mo at home, yeah, it looks easy. Try doing this at the NFL level. And by the way, go and look at the replays. That call against Will Anderson Jr., his helmet was physically on Patrick Mahomes' helmet. The footage is there. Now, the one where the two guys smashed in between, that one's more 50-50. But Mahomes is not getting protection more than any quarterback. That's how the NFL is these days. These referees protect the quarterback. As well they should. The quarterbacks is what makes the NFL money. When in doubt, you call a penalty against the defense. That's the way the game is called for every team in the NFL. That is not specific to Patrick Mahomes. That's just how the league is called for everybody. So
yeah, I mean, anyway. I don't disagree with any of the well-founded points. I do think that there's a lot of perception is reality for folks. I think that because the Chiefs are in so many primetime games, it seems like they're getting so many calls, whereas you're mentioning these other quarterbacks, not as much primetime. So the fact that they are getting the higher percentage of calls doesn't necessarily seem that way. So I think
I think a lot of it, though, Tom, is you look at like a typical game, like usually there's not a drastic penalty difference. It's what happens after the penalty. And a lot of these penalties are 50-50 calls. So the Chiefs get a call that goes against them. They regroup. The Chiefs get a call that goes for them. They win. And everyone remembers that call. But the Chiefs won because they're the Chiefs. They know how to win close games. They didn't win because of the penalty. And we forget the penalties they didn't get. You know, there are certain penalties that were not called for or against them. I'm just saying, Tom, if that call last year against Kadarius Toney went for the Chiefs instead of against the Chiefs, Twitter would have broke. It would have shut down. It would not exist anymore. It would have physically broke. So, by the way, Tom, the ref that's reffing this game, statistically, the Bills are really good when he refs. So if you want to talk about collusion, which there's none, by the way, I don't believe in that stat either. But just know the NFL did not pick because the previous game, the previous ref was a guy that the Chiefs' record was really good with him. Well, this guy in this game, the Bills' record's really good with him.
I mean, can we... are we aware of conflating factors that the Chiefs' record is just really good in general, and it's the same thing with the Buffalo Bills? So therefore, most referees are going to have
100% agree.
This is one of those things where it's a big hockey stat of whoever scores the first goal is more likely to win. Whoever scores the first goal is more likely to have the better team. So of course they're going to win. It's a conflating. Or is it a confounding?
I'm just saying, Tom, there's no collusion here. There's no fishy business. And
Yeah.
there's a guy that he's a nice guy, but it's a guy I went to high school with.
Hmm.
I went to my high school friend's baby reveal thing, gender reveal.
Sure.
And it's a friend of both of ours, but I'm more of a casual friend. He's
Sure.
close with them. You know how it is, like
Of
you're
course.
friends with him, but it's more like you're friends with him because the other guy's friends with him. And he lives in Indiana now. I see him like once every other year. Like I haven't seen the guy much the last 10, 15 years since high school. And, he's a guy that watches sports, but he's bought into this. He's bought into this. And I'm like, come on, man. I was disappointed in him. I was like, you should know better. And he actually thinks that because of betting, there's
Hmm.
actual collusion by the NFL in games. The NFL was not rigging these games, guys. There's no script out there. It does
No.
not exist, Tom. It does not exist.
It makes less sense for the NFL to fix games now because if they are doing it now with legalized betting, well, that's Congress, that's class, that's all sorts of things. Like you've already got the money train going. You don't need anything else.
Not to mention, if they were fixing it, they would give the fans what they want. They would have given them Lions, Bills. If they were to fix it, they would pick against the Chiefs because everybody hates the Chiefs. I'm one of the few people that wants the Chiefs. My show at work, where I have, our customers are commenting. Other than the Chiefs fans, Tom, every single person I ask about the Bills Chiefs game has picked the Bills to win.
Hmm.
Last year, AFC Championship game, every single person picked the Ravens. About 2/3 of my customers, non-Chief fans, picked the Texans to win. There is so much utter hatred right now towards the
Sure.
Kansas City Chiefs. And that comes with the territory. Because if you're the champion, everyone hates you. Everyone
If
hated
you're
the
the
Patriots, Tom.
Cowboys, the Patriots, yeah.
Tom Brady had this evolution of underdog. We love him. Everyone loves Tom Brady. Then he won too much. Then we
Yes.
hated Tom Brady. At the end of his career, everybody loved Tom Brady. Patrick Mahomes, when he's 38, 39, they're going to love him again.
Hmm.
They'll be like, what a great career. Let's
It's the
appreciate this
LeBron
guy.
paradox as well, the LeBron arc as well.
Exactly. But right now, they hate him because they ain't him, Tom. They hate him because they ain't him. So, anyway, you're welcome. 4
Thank
to
you.
5 hours worth of work on this, Tom.
Oh, it's surely well spent.
Time well spent. All right, man. We will regroup. We'll talk off air about the next show. Could be next week, could be the week after, but we will definitely have some sort of Super Bowl preview before the big game. Really appreciate your time co-hosting, doing a great job. Appreciate all our listeners and viewers, guys. We'll be back. Have a great time, and thanks again for tuning in.